Back to this month's roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology, marketing, brokerage, government policy, capital, construction, and cybersecurity. As always, it's a three-part show: introductions and what's new for each roundtable host in their business sector, followed by a sector focus where we unpack the biggest news and the biggest shifts happening affecting your business. And lastly, a bit of advice from each sector expert. What is it? What can you do? How do you take what we've discussed and improve your business over the next 30 days? I'm Andreas, Senie, founder of CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, commercial director here at KW, as well as a technology growth strategist. Joining me this month, none other than Saul Klein, Realtor Emeritus, data advocate, Futurist, all things original internet and listings, and then some. Saul, always nice to see you, my friend.
Great to be here.
I'm super excited for this month. A lot going on. And joining us from a mobile location that's undisclosed, Rebekah Carlson, founder, CEO, Carlson Integrated, past president of NICAR and brokerage owner, as well as none other than Rebekah. Nice to see you.
Great to see you.
As well as Maria Kowalik, Director of Business Development, Inland Green Capital, all things green and CPACE.
Thank you.
Dan Wagner, our all things government relations, also SVP Government Relations, Inland Real Estate Group of Companies. And last,
Love you,
man. Last but certainly not least, Professor Darren Hayes, CEO, Code Detectives, professor at Pace University, and one of the top 10 cyber forensic specialists nationwide. Oh my God, I could talk to each of you for hours about all the different things happening, at least from my side. And I'm better. I can talk, which is the most important fact compared to last month. So, Saul, would you kick us off? What is going on your neck of the woods? And we'll run from there.
Yeah, well, not a lot changes and everything changes. We had a good month at the car wash, even though it rained. And I always like to start with that because it tells me people are still spending money on things that are kind of luxuries. And, interest rates have gone up a little bit. We saw that the other day. New fees in place for people who are getting loans. So there's a lot going on in the real estate industry. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, is meeting in Washington, D.C. for the annual mid-year legislative meetings. And so a lot of excitement. I'm sure that.
I think he just came from Washington, so I'm sure he's got quite a bit to speak on. And Dan, I guess we're passing it right to you.
Hey,
how are
thanks
things
Saul for that. So I just got back from Washington, D.C. I was there all week last week with the Institute for Portfolio Alternatives and the Federation of Exchange Accommodators. And with those two organizations, we had our Hill visits for those two entities. And we met with members of Congress, our senators, members of the staff, and the big theme was educating about the 1031 like-kind exchange, because as we all know, President Biden in last year's budget and this year's budget wanted to cap it at $500,000, which of course would just eliminate it entirely. And so we were educating all the members of Congress about that. And it's all said, I will be in Washington on Monday. And I'm proud that the Inland Real Estate Group will be sponsoring the commercial cocktail party at NAR. And so we'll be in Washington. So that's just a quick recap, and I can go more in depth when you pass it back to me. How's that?
It's fantastic. So anybody headed to Washington, I heard sponsored open bar by Inland at the event. Just, find Dan in the crowd and things will go well.
I think NAR charges for but we're sponsoring. But I think there's a fee. So unfortunately, you'll have to pay at the door. But
I love it. Well, let's take along those lines. Maria, how are things in the green world of finance?
Well, it's interesting because CPACE as I've always said, is kind of a recession-proof type of product, and yet here, so it's funny. We get the 10th raise this week in interest rates and by the Fed, and so. No recession, everybody's still debating it back and forth. And, and I like your comment, Saul, that the consumers are still spending money. But I noticed something in particular. So I went to refill my tissue box today, and I noticed that my previous tissue box on my desk was 180 two-ply tissues, and the new boxes are now only 124. So there's no inflation, but maybe shrinkflation or whatever you want to call it. And so, things are still plugging along, and we need to do more energy efficient projects in order to get buildings up to speed and energy savings created and lesser consumption of energy sources, and so still always hopeful and still working those deals. So.
It sounds like instead of reducing the plies in the tissue paper, they should focus on optimizing that asset, their buildings, to make up those margins on the bottom line.
What kind of tissue paper, Anna Maria?
Well, no, I'm not at. I shouldn't be promoting or not brands, but no, this is a lot of brands across the board, even with the different brand that my mother uses. So
Anna Maria, you are the best.
Well, companies, you have to find a way to move that number, right? Your bottom line, right. And companies far and wide, some are reducing what they sell you, but that's not new. And look at cereal boxes, yogurt, anything of any size, it's just gotten smaller and smaller for more money.
Except for soda pop, except for Coca-Cola, right?
But it's gone up in price. That's true. Although they do sell that mini one now, like it's a 3/4 size bottle. That was new, at least here.
That's only so that they're complying with the lesser sugar, right?
I think it's for plastic concerns, like they want to show less output and being a little.
Oh yeah, they're bottles, aren't they? That's right.
How about you, Darren? How are things on your side of the fence? Cybersecurity, you can't cut costs with cybersecurity. Prices just go up. Last I checked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that the job market is still very strong. I do see, quite a number of people who've been laid off from Silicon Valley companies, but they're not cybersecurity people. There's still, a lot of positions open. I just came back from a couple of conferences related to digital forensics and investigations, one in London, one in Norwood, Massachusetts, and there's been a lot of chatter about a bill that has gone through its first pass in California. It's CAAB 793, which basically would prohibit the use of something called geofence warrants. And geofence warrants are requests to Google, for example. They're used when somebody goes missing, rape, murder cases. And so they're really, really important for law enforcement to use these types of mechanisms to find people. And so it's been supported, this bill, by the Electronic Frontier Foundation and some others. And I think a lot of people don't realize how critical these geofence requests are with finding missing persons or finding murderers. And so it's caused a lot of consternation across the board, and people are very concerned about this new bill that's been proposed in California.
Darren, do people like it or not like it?
It's a problem because it's viewed as protecting people's privacy, but it doesn't stop Google collecting your location information continually. or other companies. It's really targeted at law enforcement, and so it's seen as counter surveillance. But if you find a body in the woods and you need to find out who's been near that body at a particular time of day, you're not going to have access to that information from Google if this bill ultimately passes. So it's very much a concern, and many are kind of wondering. It doesn't prohibit companies from collecting information about you. It just prohibits law enforcement from accessing that information when a crime has been committed.
Wonder what the agenda is there.
It's one of these bills that's seeing it's similar, I think, to San Francisco, which introduced the banning of facial recognition. But I think a lot of people haven't looked at the number of people who have been caught, murderers, people robbing people, and it's the same situation as this. We've had countless people who were countless murder investigations solved, countless people being found who were abducted. Really, really important that people know about this, because people don't realize the importance of these geofence warrant requests.
Would it be synonymous, or would it be like saying you can't use DNA to track somebody for a crime kind of thing?
Yeah. The reason that it's been a little bit controversial is that you are basically sent a list of people who are in a particular area at a particular time. And so people think that this is overbroad, because there's people who are not real suspects, who are getting caught up with this. But the fact of the matter is that ultimately it's only one person that's going to be investigated. So that's where the concern is, but it really shouldn't be a concern.
I've read a few things on this, and I mean, geofencing. If you're in a 2016 or newer car, right? The car's got telematics; it knows where you are. It's going somewhere to tell them. And then for stopping crime, or at least solving crime, if you have an Apple Watch, I think most of us have smartwatches on here. To your point, Darren, if you're in an area where a crime is committed, it's not just that you're in the area, but it's the fact that your Apple Watch also noticed that your heart rate was elevated, and that maybe you were running from that area. And then you get in your car and you drive off quickly, and they put all of that together. So you're saying, even though Google's going to keep that information so they can sell me new tires, because I've now peeled off the rubber to get away from the crime, they're not going to share it with the government, is the goal.
Yeah, that's the concern.
In Illinois, we have the ACLU has a bill to try to stop license plate readers for the police for the same issue. They think that it's just it's Big Brother and it's interfering too much. But the license plate readers are how they're able to catch the bad guys, and so that's the deal. It's a new world.
Well, regulation's catching up to technology, and whether or not it's the right regulation is a different question for a group of politicians. I'm not going to jump down that rabbit hole. It's too far and wide. But speaking of geofencing, targeting, and understanding people, marketing, Becca, I mean, what's going on in your neck of the woods? Are you being tracked? Are you near a crime in the car there?
Well, I'm sure I'm being tracked in the car, and I'm in a restaurant parking lot on the side of the expressway because I had an errand I needed to run for my family. Things are very busy in marketing, and we're seeing, I think, similar to every industry, right? Technology and regulation, and it all intersects and where it all catches up. So certainly, I know a couple months ago we were talking about ChatGPT. That continues to be a important kind of moving target. AI and content and intellectual property and copyright, these all intersect, and those are big issues in marketing right now.
AI. Of course, somebody brought up AI.
Sorry.
AI. Well, I never. And there's a lot of smart people here in a lot of sectors. ChatGPT or GPT-4 is the first paradigm shift that I know of, that I can think of, that forced every startup in technology, even every real estate company perhaps, to rethink how they move forward, which really goes back to Saul in your world of 10 years ago and ISEX. But it's incredible to hear and see all the different tech founders just adjusting as quickly as they can to integrate in one way or the other. So actually, I won't pounce on that. So even if the government can't access this data, obviously we as companies will access it, buy it, sell it, and be able to use it. I got to ask, how do you see AI changing what you do? Dan, I mean, is there any talk yet about AI affecting changes in policy, writing policy, improving policy, real estate or otherwise?
Yeah, AI clearly it's an up and coming issue, or it's not even up and coming. It's here, and it is something that we have to take into consideration. And it's really over my skis to really comment on it. I wouldn't be able to highlight it, what I know or what I don't know. So I will put a pause on that. Let me do some research for the next time I'm on, because I know there's stuff going on, but I'm dealing with these other issues of just block and tackling what I'm doing right now. But
With
yes,
the 1031, and so it's still business as usual, at least on Capitol Hill, which is a good thing, because everywhere else I look, it is not business as usual because of AI.
And it's on Capitol Hill. There's lots of hearings on AI, and it's a big deal. So stay tuned for. I'm just not, at this moment, I cannot highlight what it is.
Wasn't there something that's interesting to see that politicians who don't know very much about the technology talking about the technology and talking about regulating it when they don't have a clue what it is? I like ChatGPT. I use it now. I don't go to Google first. I go to ChatGPT. I use it as a search engine, and it helps me get started. And it's just really a great search tool, right?
Has it hallucinated on you yet?
It does sometimes, but that's okay.
Well, and for those that don't know, I mean, it will. Well, Darren, why does AI hallucinate, or why? You're probably the best guy to ask here on this side. I mean, what's going on? I tried Bing's, Saul. I had Bing open for a whole day, and I tried to work my flow, like things I would look for or think of or need an answer to. And for me, just to jump in there, as long as I fed it all the information up front and asked it to say it better than I would, then it was great.
As long as you know what to ask, right?
Yeah.
Then you get a better response. I think that's one of the keys in using it.
You have to learn. You have to ask things correctly.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, and I was concerned about a report that came out this week, because I've been caring for my elderly parents over the last year, and they've been subject to, like everyone else, particularly the elderly community, with scam phone calls. And I was reading where the ChatGPT really makes the voices now much more copyable, let's say, of family members. And that is just going to increase and magnify the problem, that we're all facing. And of course, none of us are getting any younger either every day here. And, who knows the kinds of challenges that will be set forth. And it's not that doom and gloom of, sci-fi,
Rise of the machines.
Right, rise of the machines necessarily. But, there are some concerns with controls and regulations, rightfully so. And so, people like Dan going back and forth to Washington are going to need to know more about this, to really be able to speak intelligently, and to the points, and make sure that real estate concerns are protected. And, and Darren's just going to have to really be vigilant, and who knows what new challenges he'll be seeing on a daily basis. So
I think ultimately, though, I'm still old school, and I think realtors are going to be needed more than ever. I mean, people talk about AI replacing the broker, and I just don't see. I mean, there's so much data, and they might be able to figure stuff out, but that one-on-one personal touch is still everything in the transaction. And, people might say, look at this new piece of technology, but ultimately it just comes down to the fact that you have those relationships. So I still believe that NAR and our entire real estate world is still going to exist. It's just as another tool, but but some people are trying to say AI is going to replace all of our brokers, and we won't need real estate agents anymore.
Well, Dan, I was once one of the strongest proponents of you'll always need a human being in a real estate transaction. But I've since really kind of changed my position on that. But I don't think it's immediate. I think there's a generational aspect to this. And when the gamers and the people who are used to virtual reality and augmented reality and dealing with that online world, as those people mature, you're going to see more of a shift. And there's no doubt that the position of the realtor and the role of the real estate professional will be more consultative as we move into the future. And so your ability to use the technology to do the research, to be able to help buyers and sellers make decisions based on information, I think the realtors that learn how to do that are going to be better positioned. Relationships still important than those people that don't learn how to do that.
Understand.
Your network remains your net worth in real estate. I think it will be for a long time, and AI will shrink workflows. But as we've all experienced, those of us who've tried ChatGPT, I mean, it does hallucinate. You can't teach it common sense. The ChatGPT is built to help things sound good. That's how it's programmed. Doesn't not to be true or accurate, but to make sure it sounds educated. And that flow in and of itself is a problem. So Dan,
one of the things that came up in DC was Bitcoin, and how the cyber money is really is being challenged greatly by the Senate Finance Committee, and they're just trying to say that there's no real value to it, and so that's I don't own any Bitcoin, and I'm glad I don't, because it really is. It seems like it's going to be collapsing. It's my perception, but there's a lot of people who are invested in it.
Well,
it's another area. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really cyber currencies, Bitcoin being one type of cyber currency. But then look at the central banks that are all trying to create their own cyber currencies. And so what Bitcoin becomes is competition to the central banks, which are moving in that direction. Like CB, central bank cryptocurrency, CBCC. You're seeing a lot more of that. So, I think that there will be this, because it's just a payment system. So that technology will continue to evolve. And so some people own Bitcoin, some people don't, some people own Ethereum. There's many of these different types of cryptocurrencies. And today, Bitcoin's trading at $28,842.52 dollars per Bitcoin. And it's pretty steady, and it'll move back and forth. And there are different ways to buy it. And it's kind of interesting. You can buy it. You have to buy it almost fractionally, because not everybody can afford to pay $28,000 for one Bitcoin. But how else can you adapt that technology of fractionalizing assets and putting them on a blockchain so they're secure? And maybe, and I've seen this done, where you could take a piece of real estate, buy a piece of real estate, chop it up into 10,000 pieces, sell each of those pieces for $25, and now you're funding a type of cryptocurrency that's backed by a real asset. And it's almost like a crowdfunding capability using this cryptocurrency blockchain capability, and people are doing it, and I think you'll see more. Take something like a work of art, like the Mona Lisa. If somebody owned it, they could take the Mona Lisa, divide it up into a million different pieces, sell the pieces for a certain amount, and people could actually own an interest. And if enough of this was done, you could create secondary markets for it, and then people could start trading. So I think that's kind of where this will go. Not anytime soon necessarily, but I think that's kind of what a lot of people are looking at.
Yeah, I think
there's going to be ups and downs along the way, Darren.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say Bitcoin is not going anywhere, probably except up. And I mean, when you think about all currencies and all transactions, probably about 90, I think the number is 97% of financial transactions are virtual anyway, not involving like a hard currency. And so Bitcoin has been going up. It was, went back to about 18,000, I think, not so long ago, but has popped back up. And I mean, even if you just look at, the criminals' use of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Dash and Monero and other currencies, that alone is going to keep that currency popular and propped up. With regard to ChatGPT, I would just say that, we've seen big problems in the academic world with obviously academic integrity. But one of the things, the telltale signs of ChatGPT being used is we've seen a lot of these references at the end of these papers completely made up by ChatGPT. They just don't exist. The other thing I would say is, one thing I learned at this conference is about, I was speaking about IoT technology and the Internet of Things and how that's changing the world we live in. And I was learning about some farms where people are using IoT devices to track the health of all their livestock, whether each of their cows are getting enough nutrition, if they're getting a temperature of what they're eating every day. The amount of feedback from these sensors that livestock have today helps you be a more effective farmer today. So it's tremendous the way that technology and IoT in particular is impacting this.
Well, it sounds like, Bitcoin opinions aside, buy real estate. I say it every month. Real estate's tangible,
Absolutely.
it's predictable.
Yes.
At the end of the day, outside of owning a car wash with great cash flow, Bitcoin, as I understand, it's supposed to have and it's supposed to go up at the next year. I don't buy Bitcoin. I try to stay away from stocks. But Saul, when you talk about fractional ownership interests and how do you get into real estate, or how could someone get into real estate that couldn't otherwise afford to get these blue chip assets? I mean, that's the original DST product. That's a TIC. That's a partnership. That's a syndication. If they can do it through Bitcoin or whatever cyber currency, that's very exciting. And that we've seen that with a bunch of proliferation of different apps where you can buy an ownership stake in loans in different areas. And some of those have cratered recently, without naming names. So,
Yes.
Go
If you
ahead.
can take hard assets or assets and you can document the ownership in a way that can't be hacked.
We can't say
then
can't be
you've got
hacked
something.
with
Yeah,
Darren on
right.
the call,
Right.
because he'll say anything can be hacked.
But yeah, some people can steal your $20 bills out of your wallet too, right? But so
Right.
if you can take a real property, break it up and document it, we're going to get into the whole area of title insurance and why don't you use block for that, right? I saw one the other day where not only can you take a house as a simple example, break it up into 10,000 people, 10,000 pieces, sell them off one at a time. But residential property is a very specific type of rental. What about something that a piece of real estate that can produce a greater return, like an interest in a hotel? Well, you can do the same thing. And I saw this the other day where someone was taking a hotel asset and fractionalizing it. And you're right, Andreas, it really is something we've done for years, and that's group investing, I always called it. Group investing. It's just a different way to document the group investing, right? And that's
generational. It's the next generation's group investing, maybe.
Yeah.
And they might be, and the support
But
team
there's
that helps educate
Saul,
them
there's
might
value
be.
there,
Go ahead.
and that makes sense. There's value there, but
Yeah.
what the members, the staff members in the Senate that I was talking to, if there's just Bitcoin or whatever cyber money it is, if it has no value, it just except somebody says I have $28,000 and this is one. That's just what somebody just claims it is. There's really nothing underlying it, and that's the problem. And so I really think that you're going to see some major regulation from the people I talk to on both sides of the aisle. I think some stuff's going to be coming down. So that's my 2 cents.
It's interesting because, again, you got people trying to make rules on things that they don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. And so the value of any money or any currency is there just because somebody will accept it as payment. If somebody will accept something as payment, we accept Federal Reserve notes. They're not worth any. I mean, they're backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, right? And so we take them in exchange for our labor and for our products and services. Why do we do it? Because we trust that other people will take it when we want to spend it. And so if you've got people that believe that other people will take whatever the currency is, then you've got something that is a medium of exchange.
Right.
Right. And that's what they're kind of looking at. How do you exchange, and is there a future way to do it? And Bitcoin's got its own, all these different, it's amazing how many there are. Right?
It is.
Fair market value, right? So an informed buyer, what an informed buyer is willing to pay and what an informed seller is willing to sell for, regardless of what it is or when it is.
Can they buy solar panels, Anna Maria?
What,
Caught her
with
off guard.
Bitcoin or with cryptocurrencies? I don't know. I'm not the one purchasing them, and vendors are still having somewhat of a time in getting those. In fact, we don't have our usual buddy here tonight talking about contractor side of things, but the fact is that there is still some supply and demand issue with some of the renewables, and and there are more and more companies. So I'm reading every day that there's another manufacturing facility being built, to manufacture panels or to work on energy or battery storage, and so we'll see how things play out. And again, by the next generation, as Saul said, it's just all going to come together. It's a time-consuming process.
Wasn't there some controversy around the panels made in China versus the panels made here, and where can you buy them or can you not buy them? I saw something recently on that.
Yeah. That's part of the whole thing. And then do they have the components? So it's not so much even the panels themselves, because those can be created here, but it's some of the other, components with the precious metals that, hold up the process. So, so it's an ongoing battle to try to, it's 6 of one and half dozen of another, all the various problems and situations that can occur, because, nothing's 100% certain anymore.
Sounds like you got to keep the people involved to manage all these.
Yes, you do.
AI just won't do it.
For the time being.
I will give a slight plug here, because we talked about it on the show over a year ago, and you brought up supply chain shortages. Mm-hmm. Materials Exchange is a platform, a marketplace for lumber, for larger contractors to actually get truckloads of lumber if they can't get it from their local mills. Becca, actually, speaking of network is net worth, Becca ran into them at an event. They got introduced to me, and here they are being promoted on the show. Let's count the years till AI can do that. What just happened. That all being said, there it is, a technology that's rising up to service the industry, providing that shortage, that shortfall. As far as solar panels, that's your world entirely. I can't speak there. But Darren, on the tech side, solar panels, fake panels, I remember that was a big concern. Fake chips. Let me ask. I did want to ask: are we out of the woods in that area? Is that something you can speak on? Fake chips coming through.
Yeah, I haven't actually read much about that. But in terms of just going back to the AI piece, I think there's one tool out there. All you need is 8 seconds of somebody's voice, and you can have them say anything that you want. And I think I may have mentioned this before about the finance executive. A video was created of him that was very lifelike, and was used to set up meetings with I think potential investors. So AI can do a lot of things in terms of scams for you, as well as help your business.
I read something the other day that when people talk about AI, there's really 2 different types of AI, right? There's applied AI and general AI. And everybody has applied AI. That's not the big deal. What we're really talking about is this general AI, and that's where the controversy is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for those listening who don't know the difference, what's the difference between applied AI?
Well, the applied AI really is a specific need and a specific
built
solution.
for purpose, as
Yeah,
opposed
built
to
for
general
purpose.
language models where people are just throwing stuff at it. Or
As opposed to the human brain, right? And being able to reason and intuit things, and
well,
that sort of thing.
being able to reason. We don't have AI that's can reason. There is no
Yeah.
common sense AI yet.
Yeah, and that's what people are worried about, right? They're worried about this general AI, which is more like the human side of things as opposed to something built for a purpose, right? Something very specific.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I was wondering if I could ask Becca, jump into a different thing. The interest rates going up recently. What's happening with your deals?
It's actually was interesting. I had breakfast with an investor this morning who's closing on a property and will sell another one this year. As long as you have dry powder and or can pay cash, you can still transact kind of as business as normal, which is crazy to say because I know the lending environment is really, really challenging right now. It is a hard environment for most people for transactions.
And Dan, that's actually a great segue. We got carried off on AI and a big tangent here on a real estate show.
Well, no. It all comes together, right? It's about making markets.
It all comes together. I was just on with an investor, and we were talking about this show, and I said, "How often do you get this many sectors all at the same table talking about everything that could affect your business and does affect your business?" Because never. It's great, and a big shout out to everyone on the show for that. He loves it. He tunes in all the time. Matter of fact, he might not even be a client if it weren't for the show, but he is. Focused on medical and research labs.
Well, you're an amazing host, Andre.
I do my best to host, and when I can talk, it's much better. But thank you for that. I am an amazing host because I've got great guests. So speaking of real estate,
I have to give a shout out to the medical and lab industries, all the health sciences, because CPACE financing is a great way for them to make energy saving improvements and even some larger fixed equipment. It is so very much so we can connect him to this conversation.
So from my side of the fence, as we come into the 20 minutes to the hour, the focus on medical is medicals, research labs, medical office. I mean, those are resilient. Manufacturing, public storage. I know England loves public storage. I'm going to shout that out right now. Those are all areas where dry powder is being spent. To Becca's point, there are a lot of investors actively out there looking for deals. Candidly, the last 4 weeks, deal flow hasn't been the most attractive, but it's really starting to pick it up. So the valves are opening here in the Northeast, where owners, developers, people who, for a myriad of reasons, and CPACE can't save them, they now have to sell. So we're getting to a point where I think there's going to be a lot more activity. Even though as you mentioned, the lending environment is harder, at the end of the day, banks do have to lend. It's required, right? So it's just got to be quality deals to get them there. Becca, are you seeing the same asset classes in your area, or what are your investors actually investing in?
So retail, office, industrial, all
office?
Products, kind of all. Well, yeah, although the lending environment is the most challenging thing for office, is because banks have said, oh, we won't lend on office unilaterally, which is really hard when you've got a fully occupied suburban office building, single story, really strong tenant rent roll and tenant roster, and it's still challenging to find a lender. So nationally, if there were some really great lenders that wanted to come forward and talk through how they can make lending on really solid office assets work, that would be very cool, because I've seen many calls go out, like on LinkedIn, from clients and colleagues who specialize in that specific niche.
There are a few. I can give you one, and I'll chat it to you post the call. It's funny. One of the national brands that I spoke with, they don't want to get involved in affordable housing. They want nothing with senior living and housing, and that just threw me. But office, they're all about. So I will connect you post the call.
I'm so skeptical of office for a number of things, right? The terms of tenancy, leases coming due, work from home. There's all kinds of things that can affect the future of office space.
Utilization as opposed to actual occupancy. I mean, yes, your lease says you're there and that building's 80% occupied, but in actuality, there's only 30% of people in there. Maybe.
Yeah, and then the leases won't renew because, right? I mean, and then all the business around that, right, that are supported by the fact that people are in those office buildings. So I don't think we're out of the woods on the office side yet. So it's interesting to hear that people are willing to buy them.
I think, look, city core and kind of office parks are different than, your random kind of neighborhood office building. So there's
then adjacent types of neighborhoods, right?
Neighborhood adjacent.
Or adjacent, right?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a different play depending on what the deal is. But I am also seeing leases are going really well in retail. I actually, if I had my bet for the next, jewel in the crown of commercial real estate product type, it'd be retail. Because it's all cyclical. Retail. It's time. It's its turn, quite frankly. And they're experiencing fantastic occupancy rates.
I'm happy to hear that. Look, retail, at least here in the Northeast, peaked year over year. Retail rent increases peaked third quarter last year. Office peaked last quarter. But I think you're correct. Commercial real estate is consistent. Newer businesses are going to come into retail all the time. People want to start things and do things regardless. I'm all for mixed use at the end of the day. Let's combine the best of both. Darren, was that you?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, or there's the risk of building collapse. So I don't know whether you saw the building beside Pace University collapse, the parking lot.
Your university?
Yeah, so we have been able to get in for, the last nearly 4 weeks, I guess, and probably not for another couple.
Was anybody hurt?
Yeah, there was one person who was killed and a couple of people who were injured. But luckily, some new technology came to the rescue. They were able to send in this robotic dog that I think is built by Boston Scientific, and a drone to kind of see where the damage was and that kind of thing. But I was speaking to a colleague the day before yesterday, and her car is in there somewhere. They, probably lost her. So, yeah, who knows what's going to happen?
What kind of building was it, and what created the collapse?
It was a parking lot, and just the roof collapsed from above, and all these cars fell in.
Wow.
That is a sobering effect. I mean, bridges have collapsed and otherwise, but your kids at school in their parking garage next to the school is a scary thing.
Oh, terrifying.
Dan, you were about to say something, but it may have been chased out of your head as well.
Well, I was going to say that in regards to the Chicagoland area, I've had some suburban mayors tell me that they're very happy that Brandon Johnson won the mayoral race and not Paul Vallis, because now a lot of corporations are going to come out to the office in the suburbs. So that was an interesting one to hear from.
We've debated, are we going to downtown Manhattan or Chicago? Like, where do you invest? Where's that big opportunity? And I've said suburbia over and over. And then I think,
well, look at what happened in San Francisco. Everyone. San Francisco today, they highlighted that Nordstrom's is leaving downtown San Francisco because it's just unsafe. And a whole bunch of folks are saying that too. So the suburbs, I think, are a good bet.
Another phrase, and Andreas, maybe we talked about this phrase, downtown adjacent. Yeah. That the downtown adjacent properties actually are renting and selling for premiums.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Halfway there. Hybrid, tiny cities, so to speak. Getting a bit of city life. Although it's
so Rebekah, I guess this would be a question for you or Andreas, like Bath and Body Works, or sorry, not Bed Bath and Beyond, and closing the stores. That hasn't kind of caused some of this concern about risks with retail, or
there's a replacement. right
Okay.
over the horizon. I mean, it's one big box and Becca, you're jumping any time. At the end of the day, yes, there's a concern because that might be the driving anchor tenant that's filling a center. So when you have a retail center, you have food, fashion, fun, furnishing, and function, plus whatever the anchor is, like a supermarket. So whenever the large tenant that brings the traffic in leaves, and it might be Bed Bath & Beyond in this case, will those other smaller businesses continue to thrive? Will there be enough traffic? It's a concern, absolutely, but there's many other businesses looking to grow, especially here. I mean, tenant rep work on our side is busy. Everyone is busy. Everyone is moving, but it is a shame. And who knows? Maybe we repurpose that the storage. There's ways to solve that. I don't know how they're handling it over in Illinois, but that's how we're doing it in New England.
There's a lack of development in retail. For like
Mhm.
15 years, nobody's building retail. So we are thankfully supply constrained. And so we can handle some of those backfilling those spaces. And also, I don't think the Bed Bath & Beyond demise
Example.
was a surprise.
Yeah.
Right. So that one, honestly, they didn't adapt to online shopping. They didn't adapt through the pandemic. And so businesses that didn't adapt, but also didn't differentiate. So versus like a Home Goods and TJ Maxx that are about the hunt and the find, Bed Bath & Beyond really sells more commodities. So there's not a finding piece to it. There's not a proprietary product line that's strong enough to carry their entire existence.
Yeah. So those are all great points. What did Radio Shack sell again? What were they known for? If we're going to give another example of a retailer, but it is a major tenant in a lot of places. It's a concern. We lost one in Stamford, not Stamford, one town over, but it was a small blip for us here. Who knows?
Andreas, we were talking about retail outside of the U.S. and that we're actually working with a company that's building a new type of platform for retailers around the world. And
that's
so
right.
there's interest.
Well, and there's another good point. And that entire business model is predicated on the fact that there's businesses that want to go into vacant spaces. They want to get in front of people. There's no better way to sell your product than in front of people. No offense to marketing. Gotta get in front of people and sell it at the end of the day. You want to? Can we plug that one now, or can we not plug that one now?
No, you can. The name of the company is Occupy, but it's brand new. It's a startup, but the concept is retail. That's all retail.
Yeah. Businesses that need to open up in new markets anywhere around the world, that are not a Costco-sized brand, that need to find new locations, need to understand how to operate in a new market. Which, I went to India for 6 months. I didn't understand that. I didn't know a sand mafia was a thing. It is a thing. Right. So now imagine being a retailer going into a new market. You just don't know what you don't know, with or without AI. And that's what Occupy does. It gets you the right locations in the right place. And it's super exciting tech. So excited to see more on that in the coming days. Absolutely. Speaking of tech, Saul, what was the other big one? Places was another one.
Yeah.
How are they doing?
Places is doing great. So this is about taking data from a number of different sources and being able to look at real estate, not from the census block or from the zip code level, but from the natural market level. Something that realtors inherently know. Buy here, don't buy across the street for whatever the reason might be. But can we actually look at that? Can we actually use that data, mash it up so that we can make more informed decisions? And the people that are really interested in this are the capital markets and the secondary money market. That when they go in and buy a multi-billion-dollar portfolio of loans, where should they invest their money? In what area should they invest their money when they buy that? Or the actual creation of potentially a spot market, so you can create a futures market in real estate, which just reminded me. So there's a big potential deal closing, and we should keep our eyes open for it. And that is the ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange, projected purchase of Black Knight. Because if that happens, what I'm told, it will change the mortgage industry completely, taking thousands of dollars out of the mortgage process, and it will bleed over into the real estate space. So the FTC is trying to hold this up right now. But the company ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, that's the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange, and many other exchanges. And their whole concept is create a futures spot market, so you can create a futures market. And of course, there is no spot market in real estate unless somehow you could aggregate multiple listing service data and you could get transactional data. And so there's lots of things going on in that area.
Well, there's a long way to go technology-wise, but strides are being made. Absolutely. Yep. And it sounds like the ICE acquisition that you're talking about, should investors, should brokers, is it going to improve the lending environment, or is it going to make lending harder?
Well, the proposal is supposed to take, now it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to Fannie and Freddie, they're against it, but it's direct competition, because what they're really talking about is bringing more private capital into the mortgage marketplace. And you can bring more private capital in if you can create more transparency, so you can better rate risk, and there's just what you can't grade. And so if there's a better way to grade and figure out what the risk is, then private capital will come in. Of course, that would supplant some of the GSE, some of the Fannie and Freddie stuff. So there's a lot of controversy here, but ICE has put up $13.8 billion of about $50 billion over the last 10 years to revolutionize the mortgage marketplace. And this acquisition of Black Knight is a key piece. And right now they're looking at a July hearing, and ICE wants to close yesterday, right? So we're kind of waiting to see what happens here in the next week. Will it go out? Will we have to wait till July to see a decision on the acquisition of Black Knight, or are we going to hear sooner than that? And that'll be a big deal to all of us.
Well, and we're 10 minutes to the hour. So it sounds like the number one thing from your side of the fence for people to pay attention to is this acquisition. I mean, is that where you're telling practitioners to go? This will be the biggest thing to change your business. Dare I say a paradigm shift? You heard it first with Saul.
Yeah, most people wouldn't understand it. I think those people that kind of understand the way markets and capital markets and the stock exchanges work, I think this is something to keep your eye on. Absolutely.
And as I said, 10 of the hour, Anna Maria, we've jumped around a bit today. What is the one big thing? It sounds like, go ahead.
Well, to Saul's point, I was just going to say, that's what CPACE funding is too. It's that private capital. And so that is, Fannie and Freddie are the only holdouts nationwide in giving the greatest, consent to using CPACE in mortgages that are held by them. Even HUD has given consent to work alongside CPACE, and they did this in 2017 with a guidance document, and then state by state it has to be approved by Attorney General, et cetera, but there is a process in place. And so I think to Saul's point again, the private capital, that is a huge thing, and that's what all CPACE is based on.
So relationship drives rate is a favorite statement a bank said to me the other day, right? Private capital, whether it's bank, public, private, it doesn't matter. But you have a capital stack, and now more than ever, it's finding the right rate through the right relationships for your capital stack. And so from what I'm hearing, it sounds like if this goes through for ICEX, it's going to make more capital available, which in my mind is always a good thing. More availability means more flexibility on pricing, which means you can go out further and wider and do more in the industry, assuming the government doesn't overregulate it, which would be Dan's side of the
less risk for
less
taxpayers.
risk.
Less risk for taxpayers, because we have to back up Fannie and Freddie and everything that Fannie and Freddie does, right? Treasury. And so if you bring more private capital in, how do you do that? You got to reduce the risk. You got to make it more transparent. So that's what some of these technologies are trying to do today, and it's just fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and be a part of. I mean, most of these technologies you can come in and take part in. You're changing history, which is always exciting. The over to you, Dan. And Maria,
So-
thank you. C-Pace. That was a nice tie into private capital, by the way, for those that don't know.
So the big takeaway for everybody, from my standpoint, in Washington, all of the different lobbyists that I talked to, the big issue is all of the tax reform is going to happen in 2025. So all of the tax issues that were taking place under President Trump, all those things are sunset, and we have to have tax reform is happening in 2025. So people are looking at who's going to run for president. At this moment in DC, they believe it's going to be President Biden and then former President Trump as the two people. If things were happening today, and then people believe that President Biden will win, and then they believe that the House and Senate will be Democrat. So they believe it'll be in DC, in the Beltway, people are thinking it's going to be a all Democrat election in 2024. And so be prepared for a major education of members of Congress about
Got to protect the 1031. The
1031.
401k of real estate.
Right. But remember, one of the things that President Biden want to get rid of stepped-up basis. He wanted double capital gains rates. He wanted to basically get rid of the 1031 or cap it at 500,000. And then the Senate Democrats also were talking about wanting to market your securities, and you pay tax on phantom income. And so there's a lot of reasons why everybody listening to this need to understand who their members of Congress are, and to get a relationship with them so that they can talk to them about what impacts their industry, because a lot of stuff is hanging in the balance for 2024's election.
I can't even imagine that, because I can if you're talking to people in DC, where people actually believe that we're going to be looking at the legislature's completely Democrat. That just blows me away, at least based on the people that I talk to and see. But they're not in DC. So if you're inside the Beltway, it's a different reality.
The abortion issue is what they think that is going to raise its head again, and that's going to be the thing that's going to drive people back over to the Democrat side. But all that can change. All that stuff can change, and I know Ron DeSantis is trying to really up his game to challenge former President Trump. So everything could change, but right now, this little snapshot, that's what Washington insiders believe.
And keep talking to your congressman and everyone, and go down to Capitol Hill. For those of you that are NAR members, go down on the bus that takes you. I think it's this weekend actually.
Yes,
at least out of Connecticut.
This here shows the RPAC, Realtors Political Action Committee. I'm a proud President Circle Golden R Hall of Fame member of RPAC. So that's the best investment in the whole world.
Absolutely.
All right. Back on the marketing side, brokerage side, the investment side, it seems like you're doing a lot more with these investors specifically, but it's real estate related.
We have a lot of clients that are in the commercial real estate investment space, and it's really a very neat way to keep a pulse on what's going on. And that's what I would encourage our watchers or listeners to do, is keep a pulse on what's going on within the real estate cycles, and continue to elevate the innovation that makes markets. We talked about market making today, and I think that that's a critical piece. I'm seeing it in Anna Maria's business, seeing it in Bitcoin, seeing it in cybersecurity, certainly seeing it in marketing and in AI, is that a lot of innovation is creating whole new marketplaces. So it's important to keep an eye on what's going on.
Absolutely. So, speaking of AI, cybersecurity, Darren, you know I'm headed your way. And I bought Faraday bags to put all my devices in. So I really am upset about this warrant thing, because I bought all this stuff to block the government, but I guess I don't need it all. What should businesses be doing for the next 30 days, in your humble opinion?
Yeah, well, I just think that continued investment in cybersecurity is important. I mean, the losses associated with ransomware attacks are just unbelievable, and can put your business out of business. Like, for example, I believe it was maybe Merck one of the big pharmaceutical companies, was hit by ransomware, and a Bloomberg article showed that it cost them $1.3 billion, ultimately in loss of reputation, problems with research, interruption with distribution of medication. So the costs are immense. Companies really need to invest in technology, but most importantly, people. People are what are going to help us get through this and have better cybersecurity protocols.
So, and people, not AI. We're not there
Yep.
yet. Got to be people.
You can't replace good people in terms of having good security.
The so Becca, you said market makers, and we've got policy changes and CPACE and the like. From my side of the fence, it's market by market. If you're not, just because the national headlines say we're in a free fall or don't say we're in a free fall, or abortions or what have you. Yes, the national headlines are very important and macro trends are very important, but throughout Connecticut, depending on which market we're in, there are different hotspots for innovation, for investment. Companies and municipalities are already shifting gears to make them better for the next 5 years, 10 years. So finding a way, to Saul's point early on, and what he said for years, to be involved, to be in front of your local politicians, to make sure that you know where money's going and where initiatives are going, because in certain markets, that's going to make the difference. You're going to be the next biggest Main Street guy, the top tier go-to, because you can't teach what happens network to network, person to person. Speaking of person to person, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention London, May 10th and 11th, CRETech. We're proud to sponsor, be a marketing partner with them. It is a great collection of some of the smartest minds, smartest tech, and smartest money in the real estate space. Go to CRETech, use this code, enjoy your time in London. More importantly, come back, watch the show, and then come back for CRETech New York in the fall. Unless you're too busy at ICSC Vegas at the luncheon, which is, sorry, Becca, I'll give you that final plug. What happens in ICSC Vegas outside of seeing Inland for yet another event? Who's also there?
So Monday is our luncheon at the Renaissance Las Vegas Hotel, adjacent to South Hall, 11 to 2, and everyone is welcome. Seriously, like, people can just show up and have lunch and talk to other people. It's amazing.
Real people talking to people, building relationships to drive better rates. Say no to the machines. Say yes to CPACE. And write your congressman.
God bless you.
For those tuning in, don't forget you can rate, review us. It really does help. And tune in on the 18th with CTO from Intel CTO Steve Oren, and hopefully Darren, you join us as we talk more about AI specifically during our sector interview. It's going to be a great one-on-one where we dive deep into some of the real issues affecting Intel, goals Intel's and shifts Intel's making, and the industry overall. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where there's a host of great content, including sector interviews, past shows. And you can learn more on our website, CRECo.ai. I want to thank my co-hosts here, this collective of incredibly intelligent people. I want to thank our listeners for showing up every month and continuing to help us grow. And I want to thank our show producer in the background and all he does. I've actually seen his back end today, and it's been scary just looking at all the doodads and whistles on my screen. So I'm going to come back to my brokerage and the rest of the tech world. Guys, thank you. It's been an incredible month. Can't wait to see you next month. I'm so sorry that Inland's Dan and Anna Maria can't make it because their company is being awarded the
Lifetime Achievement Award. There we go.
Their Lifetime Achievement Award.
For our 4 founding fathers. Yes, absolutely.
And that is huge, right? So it's you'll be missed, and then we can talk all about it once you come back the following month. Thank you, guys. Have a great month.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.